A reading from Exodus. On the third new moon, after the Israelites had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that very day they came into the wilderness of Sinai. They had journeyed from Rephidim, entered the wilderness of Sinai, and camped in the wilderness. Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Then Moses went up to God. The Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, "Thus you shall say to the house of Jacob, and tell the Israelites, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. Now therefore, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the Israelites." Then God spoke all these words. "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me." The second reading is taken from the Gospel of Matthew. When the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." God, who calls us into relationship, may my words and the thoughts in our hearts and minds be pleasing in your sight. Amen. Today we are beginning a 4-week sermon series on the 10 Commandments. While the readings from Exodus will change each week, the accompanying text from the Gospel remains the same. The text from Matthew underpins the narrative of the giving of the commandments. The commandments are given to Moses for the people after the people have escaped from Egypt and set up camp in the desert of Sinai. The promise of God to Moses at the burning bush has been fulfilled. God spoke to Moses there, saying, "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of that land. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Now the former slaves are free, having followed Moses as their leader, the one whom God appointed and had chosen to speak through. It seems they have reached the end of their journey camping in Sinai. But God has other ideas. They are really just at the beginning of the journey, one step in. God reminds the people of what he has done for them, bearing them up on eagle's wings to preserve and protect them. It is on the basis of this generous saving act that God puts forth a proposal for the Israelites. "If you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples, a priestly kingdom and a holy nation." More appropriately, it should read, "You are my treasured possession. I am committed to ensuring you become a holy nation, so I am laying out some rules for you to live by." God mentions a covenant, which is a binding agreement between two parties. The Hebrew word used, bereth, signifies a divinely sanctioned commitment. In a human divine covenant, God is either the one making the covenant, making the commitment, or acting as a witness to a human commitment made in his name and presence, for example, a wedding. Berith also carries with it the notion of bonds, obligations, and oaths. It formalizes the terms or expectations of a relationship. Through the act of bringing the Israelites out of their oppression in Egypt, using Moses as a spokesperson, God has restored the relationship begun with Abraham. The promise of a nation, of a people. God has chosen these people to be in relationship with. At first, the relationship was based on God hearing the cries of the people in Egypt and being moved to take action. The people were reliant on God's action or intervention in their lives. But now the people are free. God expects more out of the relationship that they have established. Therefore, God sets the ground rules. Over the next 3 weeks, we will look at what those rules are. But to sum them up today, the first tablet has to do with God, and the second tablet has to do with humanity. That is why Jesus' summation in Matthew is being used as a backdrop for the whole series. We are to love God with all that we have, and to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. This love is not a feeling. Let's face it, some people are hard to love. Rather, this love is an action, a verb. We intend to follow God's will and God's way. We intend good and peace for others. The commandments having to do with neighbors will help the people in this new land to establish trust and goodwill in the community. This is what will make the Israelites a holy nation, the way they live in community, how they treat each other, and how they interact with other nations. Their behavior will set them apart. We follow these same commandments, not so we can become more holy or spiritual in our own selves. The law is not for our individual benefit. The law is not for us at all. It is for our neighbor. God calls us to be in relationships that will ensure the community can thrive. In this way, the holy nation will come into being. This means that rather than seeing the commandments as a strict moral code enforced by a judgmental God, we are given the opportunity to see them as a tool of transformation, given to us by a loving, hopeful God. God has chosen us and given us everything we need to live full lives. Do we choose God? Do we choose relationship with God and with our neighbors? What is the transformation that God seeks in us, in our thinking, in our hearts, in our relationships? I'm going to close with a blessing for choosing by Jan Richardson. What we choose changes us. Who we love transforms us. How we create remakes us. Where we live reshapes us. So in all our choosing, O God, make us wise. In all our loving, O Christ, make us bold. In all our creativity, O Spirit, give us courage. In all our living, may we become whole. Amen.